a separated life, a transformed mind, and to always be remembering and meditating on the mercies of God. You have those four things. It's going to help us really transition to what we're getting into. What are we getting into? Next couple of chapters, we're talking about relationships. Relationships are hard. Interestingly enough, verses 1 and 2 of chapter 12, we were discussing our relationship with God. And we were talking last week why it's so important to have those four key things understood. To pray on those things, to study those things, to meditate on those things. Why? Because relationships are wicked hard. But then we start bringing our own logic into it. Well, the relationship with my wife or my husband, I married my best friend. We get along great. I'm glad. My best friend, we talk all the time. I don't need help in my relationship. We get along fine. Also, still glad. So what do I mean by these relationships are really hard? How do we manage our relationships within these walls from believer to believer? Well, we get along great. Unless it's Monday through Friday. Then I'd just rather not talk to any of those people. What about our relationship to the government? In chapter 13 next week, we're going to see, let every soul be subject to the government. How much fun has that been in the last 2 years? To be submissive to the government. You can't do that or even know how to do that properly without first that relationship with God. It also says, submit yourselves to one another. Man, how hard is that one? Oh, I don't think so. Oh, Billy Joe Jim Bob, man, he's just mean. Next time he asks me for a cookie, I'm either going to ignore the question or he's going to get it at Mach 2. Managing right relationships is really, really hard. Apart from God, which is why it spends the first 2 verses in our relationship with God and through the grace He has given to us to kind of show us how the rest of it is going to fall into place. Why is Paul focusing so much on relationships? Why is it that this letter on relationships is going to the churches, again, plural, to Rome? Rome had quite the mix, just like anything through the rest of that region, or the Macedonian region, the Grecian regions, the region of Galatia. It was very mixed. We had Jews, we had Gentiles, kind of mixed together. In Rome, you remember there were Jews in Rome? Romans were in Rome. They were all in church together. Romans, or Gentiles in general, had their own forms of worship, styles of worship. They handled things a little bit differently. They certainly dressed a lot differently. They acted a lot differently. They were a little more loose in certain areas of their lives. So we're just going to chalk some of those guys up to the Hawaiian shirt wearers. Thank you all for your participation this morning. Then we have the other side. We have the Jews that were also coming to the church. They were raised quite a bit differently. They did things quite a bit. They dressed differently. They ate differently. They worshipped differently. Now they're all together in one body, and you just kind of see, just like we have now, a little bit of, people have quirks. People have a lot of weird stuff. When I talk to somebody, I prefer something like a 2 or 3 foot gap, so I can fully just kind of absorb what's going on. Some people are bubble breakers. Some people like to get real close. How do we handle those little weird, and thus, maybe I'm revealing too much about myself, but everybody has a little quirk. Everybody has something. But there was an edict that went out. For 5 years, the Jews were removed fully from Rome. But the churches kept growing and growing and packing full of Gentiles, full of the Hawaiian shirt guys and gals. And then the edict ends, and the Jews are allowed to come back, and they go back into their places of worship, really desiring to be back in that place in the body. And now it's kind of heavy one-sided. And relationships get hard. We see relationships with the government through the Pauline epistles. We saw Paul's dealings with not just the Roman authorities, but also the religious authorities. And we see how Paul and Peter and the apostles, and even how Christ dealt with the authorities and the religious authorities of those times. So today we're going to keep it pretty simple through the rest of chapter 12. We're going to be talking about our relationship within the body with believers and relationships with those that do not. So we're going to pick up in verse 3. For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. We got a lot right there in verse 3, don't we? So Paul, speaking to them, he's speaking through the grace given to him. Whenever we think of certain Bible heroes, we really think like, man, that guy is so high up on a pedestal, it's not even funny. They did the same thing with Peter, didn't they? Peter was identified as the first pope. He was the beginning of the papacy. Peter didn't do that. Peter said, I'm just like you. I'm one of the brethren. Paul is saying, I am able to write to you this kind of letter and to give you this kind of instruction, not because I am so amazing, but I am just God's gift to the Roman Empire. That is what has allowed me to write this epistle to you. That's not what he's doing. He's saying, because of God's grace, that's the only reason I'm here. What did Paul deserve? If we backtrack through the book of Acts, Paul, while still called Saul, I believe starting about Acts chapter 9, we see a very fierce persecution of the church. He hunted men, women, children from Jerusalem all the way up to Damascus, arresting, persecuting, killing those that he would find. What did Paul deserve? The exact same thing that we all deserve. And it wasn't this. What we deserve is condemnation. Paul's saying it's through grace. Paul is using himself as an example, and I really like that. It's really hard to use yourself as an example when you're busy trotting around on your high horse. If you're on a pedestal, hey, you need to be more like me, less like Christ, to attain more of my glory, less of the glory to glory that is his. It really kind of complicates the situation. It says, don't think more highly of yourself. Paul is reminding them, again, as we back up into the first two verses, to remember his mercies. Not to think more highly of himself. That's important. Because we have two aspects to it. We have two extremes. It's rare-ish that we find that middle ground, isn't it? Either we think quite the elevated sense of ourselves, and we strut about, make sure we're in that particular pattern of lifestyle, and we see that concept of pride quite a bit. What's the other extreme? Thinking too lowly of yourselves. We get wrapped up into that one a lot. Man, he's so humble, he's just giving everybody he's letting them go get their tacos first before he jumps the line and go gets his. Such a humble guy. And what's in the back of this guy's mind? I'm not worthy to eat before anything else. I'm way more lowly. I'm absolutely useless. We've had, especially in some of those times we're really getting beat up, we drop our mentality way, way down, think way less of ourselves. God says you're worth everything. So much so that he provided himself as a sacrifice. What we're getting into in the book of Genesis. In the prophets, he says that you are the treasure, that you are the apple of his eye. So it truly is important to see who we are in light of God's grace and the truth revealed in the Word. And he commands us to think soberly. Now remember, let's keep it in context. We should always be thinking soberly, thinking clearly, thinking rightly. But what is the context here in relationship with believers? In verse 4, he's going to go into thinking soberly. For as we have many members in one body, but all the members do not have the same function. So we, being many, are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. Think soberly about one another. What is Paul really kind of highlighting? Within the body, it is absolutely important to be united. We need to have unity in the body. on the other side of the coin, it's also absolutely important that you have diversity. You need unity and you need diversity. We have a really hard time with that concept. We have nothing but unity. We're going to look like a cult or a weird semi-unarmed militia. That's not what the church is called to be. If we have no unity and only diversity, that gives us a fantastic picture of where we are in the world right now. Zero unity about anything. We can't agree on politics. We can't agree on doctrine. We can't agree on religion. We can't agree anything. We will literally fight over anything. Nobody's united to one point. One of my favorite examples is where the government stands, or government parties rather, Democrats and Republicans. We see tons of diversity between both sides, but they can't even come together and harness the concept that they are supposed to be responsible to the American people, looking to the interests of the American people, their people, our people. We care more about diversity, less about unity. When you get that in the body, it's what Paul describes in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 or chapter 2, that the body is just ripping at each other. It's not supposed to be that way. We have to have unity and diversity. We have to recognize that we are, even though we're individually, we're still part of the one body. And that's really hard because some of us aren't satisfied with that part of the body. Well, I don't want to be an eye, I want to be a belly button. Well, how come he got to be a toe? How come he got to be the big toe and I got to be the little toe? Why does he get to be the mouth? So we lose focus on unity. If everybody comes together instead of twitching fingers, completely absent purpose, and instead is able to make a fist, and grab onto things, and then put that thing to work. The body has to remember that even though we are diverse, we take all of those things that make us different, like the gifts that we have been given, which we'll get into. You bring all those together, the machine starts turning to accomplish the purpose that Christ has set for the church. Great example. Praying it doesn't happen. We still have a few months to hammer out kinks, so it is what it is. We've got our one big outreach coming this year. Coming in October 31st, we have our Harvest Festival, or Hallelujah Night, or whatever it is that we're going to call it. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. We're going to have games set up everywhere in the sanctuary so the kids can come in and play games and they can win candy. So we're going to have people controlling these games. We're going to have a person or persons making sure that everything's set up properly, so while one kid's throwing a beanbag, another one's not running through that secular fire and getting wiped out by a beanbag. Some kids have got a fierce throat. We're going to have somebody guiding people in. We're going to have somebody greeting people. We're going to have somebody praying for people. We're going to have a skit. Man, the skits. If we come together with one purpose, and what is that purpose? To preach Christ and Him crucified. To provide a safe and fun and true evening for kids that want to come in and play games and hang out. Can we accomplish that as a body? If we're united, absolutely. Now imagine if we don't care about the unity and we're more about diversity. That's going to go wrong from the very beginning. We've got two people doing guides. Well, I'm going to go this way because I think it's shorter. So now you got two different crowds running around and people fighting during the skit. It can just come and unravel real quick. And that's a big problem with the churches now, isn't it? We do not care about unity. We care about diversity. So this church will stay over in its corner. We're going to stay in our corner. You don't mix with our people. We won't mix with your people. And it's a huge poison and a huge lie that the church just continues to kick around. One of the most amazing things I've seen this summer, I think it's Blue Mountain Baptist. Is that the big boys on the other side there? They did this summer sports camp, Awana, whatever kind of situation for a week here in town. Tons of different churches, people that aren't believers bringing their kids, and they had worship time with songs. They had some Bible time with each of the groups. Obviously, they had sports, and one of the most amazing things that I had seen. Because they don't check at the door, are you a part of this church? Well, you need to make sure you're buying off on our doctrine before you drop your kids in here. Man, how things change. It's all about Jesus. We're united in Christ instead of our body parts fighting with one another. If you're curious on what that looks like, Jerry Lewis back in like the 50s or whatever it is had a great scale of what happens when your body fights itself. So, we being many are one body in Christ. I really wish I could harness that concept. If we were one body in Christ, what's one thing we absolutely do not like as the individual? We don't like pain. Ever. We don't like physical pain. We don't like emotional pain. We just don't like pain. We go out of our way to make sure there's no pain. Before I go to bed, before I send my kids to bed, I make sure they go pick up all their toys. Nothing makes me hotter than stepping on a Lego at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what it is about Legos. So I make sure they've got all of that cleaned up before they go to bed. My son is my wild child. I don't know what he does in his room, but it will be spotless 5 minutes later, less spotless. Looks like a war zone. There are nights, even Meg's like, you know what, make sure I have a path to your bed. Make sure you have a path out of your bed. And then we repeat the process of cleaning up. Why? We avoid pain. So it would be incredibly foolish to inflict pain on your own body because of what? Pettiness, strife, envy, greed, jealousy, because you had a bad day. You don't just normally see somebody walking around smacking themselves in the face or poking themselves in the eye. I don't remember what commercial it was, an insurance commercial or whatever, that they took pleasure in pain. The lady spilled the hot coffee on herself, she started chuckling. That's not normal. Those are the kinds of people we have committed. So why do it within the body? When we are described as one body in Christ, if you've got a hurt arm, what do you do with that arm? You are the most useless thing I've ever seen. No. Equally stupid. You're going to splint it up. You're going to coddle that injury until it heals. You're going to do everything you can with Tiger Balm, Bag Balm, or Tylenol, or aspirin, whatever your process is, essential oils, until that's feeling better. And you're going to get it back into circulation. All right, it can throw a ball. Let's go throw a ball. Now you can ride a bike. Perfect. Let's go ride a bike. Why is it in the body? You messed up a little bit. You're useless. Why don't you go hide in the corner for a little bit until X time has been established. That is a part of why relationships are so hard. And Paul also pointing out in those first three verses, that these gifts and these things that have been given to you, you have been given that portion of faith, that measure of faith. You have been given those gifts. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, we see those gifts are divvied out by grace, by the Spirit. What does that mean in context with don't think too highly of yourself? Some people have gifts that they would consider grand. Some people have gifts or see gifts that they would consider lowly or useless. And then we judge those gifts. Either A, why am I a pastor? Because I'm super smart. Because I've got these chiseled, rugged features. Because I'm in great physical shape. Because of my prowess and my public speaking capability. No. Anybody that decides to go scrolling through my Facebook page, you can refute just about any one of those in just a few years alone. I shouldn't think too highly of myself because of my calling as a pastor, my calling as a teacher, because of things that I've done, because it's by grace. Again, what is grace? Receiving something that you didn't earn. So if I didn't earn it, why would I boast about it? Likewise, looking down on gifts. The most important calling you can fulfill in your life is the calling that God has put on your life. If that is scrubbing toilets, guess what? Your gift is just as important as mine. Because what happens if you don't do that? Again, back to the gifts. You shouldn't judge your gifts so highly, and you should certainly not judge other people's gifts so lowly. And Paul's going to get into some of these. There is a great list, several lists of spiritual gifts through the Word. We're just going to, for the sake of time, we're just going to cover these ones in chapter 12. So, having then gifts differing to the grace that is given to us. Gifts are going to be different. That's why we have to make sure we maintain that diversity, that concept, that theory of diversity within the body of Christ. There's going to be different gifts. What happens if everybody has the gifts of being a pastor or a teacher? It's going to get weird up here. What happens if everybody has the gift of worship leader? Again, not everybody's going to have the same gift. Not everybody's going to have the same calling. But it is important to recognize that each one, a gift is given. So having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, let us use them. That's a command. Everybody has some sort of spiritual gift. So what is Paul saying? Use the gift. What we have is a blessing. What we've been trained for is a blessing, and to be used in the body. Paul's saying, use the gifts. Use the gifts that's been given to you. Why? Because it's for the benefit of the body. I am a horrible evangelist. Worse than being an evangelist. You don't want me as the worship leader. That's why I have Cassie as the worship leader. That's why we're raising up people in the for evangelism, for going out. Or we have people in the body say, hey, this is what's been on my heart to go and do X. Perfect. Tell me what you need. Let's go do it. Oh, I need you to sing on Sunday. But we'll find somebody that can. Use your gifts. If prophecy, let us prophesy in proportion to our faith. So the first biggie is prophecy. Prophecy has been kind of a hard one for us, for the church as a whole. When we think prophecy, what do we think of? Foretelling. When we read prophecy through the Bible, it's okay, this prophet or this person or God is telling someone something that's going to happen in the future. Prophecy is foretelling. Then we get confused when people say 2/3 of the Bible is prophecy. And we look at the Bible. Nuh-uh. We have all these sections of history. We have all these sections of poetry. We have all these, everything else besides foretelling. An aspect of prophecy that we typically forget about is forthtelling. Speaking the heart and mind of God. Foretelling, giving that message to somebody else, or a message going to the body. Prophecy is amazing. Especially, we like to think, well, I'd really like to tell the future. Who wouldn't? Realistically, who wouldn't? But we completely kind of demote how important it is to foretell, to speak that word of life or warning to somebody else. I've had the amazing experience of having prophecy spoken over me. Not foretelling, but forthtelling. And it's been one of the most uplifting things and confusing things. What kickstarted Megan and myself journey into ministry, apart from where we were comfortable, was prophecy, was a foretelling over our lives. I'm super excited about it and super nervous. Job, money, housing, the whole works. But he says, if it's prophecy, then prophesy. If you are given a spiritual gift, use that spiritual gift. Is it bad to stray outside the lines of your spiritual gift? Sometimes it can be. If I am not called to be a pastor, but I really like the idea of being a pastor because I get to be up in front of everybody else and to talk and to whatever else, I really want that. So I always ask the question when people want to serve. Why? Why do you want to serve? The answer is rarely the right one. It's, well, I think I would be great in that position because I know how to do X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of you in that sentence. It's not the right answer. If we start coloring outside the lines that we were given, things typically get to a dangerous place. We have a spiritual gifting. Use that spiritual gifting. He's saying, so if you have the gift of prophecy, prophesy into proportion of or to our faith. That's the confusing part. What does that mean? In proportion to our faith. There's 4 different lines of thought to go into that one. It's not going to make it any easier with you, but I kind of agree with all four of them. So the first one is in proportion, essentially, to the faith of the hearers, whether or not they can discern or to accept that piece of either foretelling or foretelling. The second one would be in proportion to our own individual faith. If we really can't tell whether or not, so let's say I have the gift of prophecy, I believe I was given a message to give to Gary. Might be a hard message, might be a good message, but I can't really discern whether or not God gave me that message to give to him or not. If you can't discern by that measure of faith that you possess to discern whether or not that came from God or just something that's just popped up in your head, you should probably not give that message. I've had wonderful people in my life that have stopped me from giving a message that was on my heart. When I first started out in ministry, I had quite the sharp tongue. Something was wrong, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to fix it right away. And I've caused a lot of damage doing that. I've learned a better way. It's like, well, it's on my heart. It's not on your heart, it's in your head. And that's a dangerous place. So rather, I took more time to pray on it. And we have to remember that it's in proportion to faith, to believing in what is happening is going to go forth and to do what it's going to do. That portion of faith kind of means you're not always going to see the desired effects. That's a hard one. How many of the prophets preached their message and they reached their desired effects? I don't think any of them. Even Jonah. Jonah wanted to preach the message. He wanted the effect that Nineveh was going to be destroyed. Nineveh stood for a time. And he was very upset about it. After he preached the message, he was so sure that Nineveh was going to fall, he didn't even stay in the city. He wanted to sit outside the city. One, so he wasn't a part of the destruction. And two, he got to watch. I believe it was Ezekiel, may have been Jeremiah. He was warned, you're going to go forward, you're going to give this message, but they are not going to listen to you. But you're going to give it anyway. From the pulpit, I like to think that the message is going to go out. It's going to land on ears. It's going to go from the head down to the heart. And people are going to decide to start living out the gospel. Doesn't always happen. When we don't see desired results, what do? Change tactics, change our mind, abandon mission altogether instead of resting on what God said was going to happen is going to happen. The last one, the fourth one, is typically the one that I lean to more. So in the original, in the Greek, in proportion to our faith, that word our isn't there, and instead it's the word the. They do have problems kind of getting those back and forth. So in proportion to the faith, which means it's according to the accepted body of doctrine. All four of those are absolutely important. The fourth one I believe to be, for me, to be very important. When someone is prophesying, what they are doing is they're forthtelling. They're giving a message from God to the individual or to the body. You are quite literally stepping forward as God's microphone with God's message. So if you say this message that I have given to me from God, and you go give that message, we start to see kind of the weight behind it. Moses misrepresented God one time. He was told to speak to the rock. What did he do? To try and show God's anger, instead of his mercy, he struck the rock. Okay, well, he lashed out a little bit. Instead of taking time out and praying first, he struck the rock. Not a big deal. What happened with Moses? He was not allowed to enter the promised land. He was taken up onto a high hill and shown the promised land. Now, he didn't lose his salvation. You have to remember, at the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses was there with Christ, but he didn't get to go as far as he could have gone because he misrepresented. So if you step forward, they give the prophecy that does not follow the doctrine, and you're going counter to the doctrine, you're heaping all manner of judgment onto yourself. Which is why it's incredibly important for us, especially for Paul's time, for all the disciples' time, even for our time, false teachers. Oh man, the prophets that come out of the woodwork at this last election. They were everywhere. Everywhere. All these prophecies that these prophets are throwing out concerning Trump. No surprise. A whole bunch of them came out the other side for Biden. Well, this is the prophet the Lord has given me. It's like, back to that united piece. So you have one prophet, Trump is going to be the president. God has shown it to me. Literally with another one, Biden's going to be a president. God has shown me. What message does that send from the church? Granted, they probably not a part of the church. It's not a good one. It's not a good one at all. How do we discern those things? When we're dealing with prophecy or foretelling, what's the focus? What is it? Just the geographical or the spiritual focus? Two things. Jerusalem or Jesus. Jesus is always that geofocal point, and Jesus is always the focal point. That's what the word tells us. And I got so many phone calls, and emails, and conversations, and text. Well, this prophet, this is what he said about Trump. He's a false prophet. Well, what makes you say that? It has nothing to do with the Jews or with Jesus. That's just step one. But we can continue. How are we able to discern those things? By reading your Bible every day and praying every day. How can you spot something that's false? Have to read the Word. If it's going completely contradictory to what the revealed will of God is and what isn't revealed in the Word, probably not very accurate. Or ministry, let us use it in our ministering. In our service, let us use it in our... So I really like that. That word ministering is kind of that broad overall term for just serving in the body. We have fantastic examples of that in this body. A little bit of service everywhere. We call them pipe hitters. We have a couple of them. And it's been fantastic. It's incredibly useful, and they do it with a smile on their face. We've got guys that will greet. They'll help hand out cookies. And a couple of them are like, look, we're shorthanded in the children's ministry. Do you mind? And you see them slide over to the children's ministry or the sound booth or to make repairs. If their gift is to just serve, they're just serving in any capacity that they want to. But a lot of people will look down on that one. He's comparing prophecy to the toilet guy. When we see the prophecy guy, it's like, oh, he's super spiritual. He has the gift of foretelling, which, if it was foretelling, you just imagine the pedestal we put that one on. Then you have the guy that's just doing all the other service. God doesn't see it that way. And I believe that's why both of them are so close together in the same section. Again, they were divvied out by grace. Some people have been blessed with dreams. I have been blessed with dreams. It's been easy to think, well, because I'm extra spiritual, I got dreams. Yeah, extra spiritual. Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. Jacob had dreams. We remember Jacob's name, heel catcher, cheat. He had dreams. I don't think David had any dreams. And David was a man after God's own heart. But we like to isolate it to only the good ones. Who had dreams where no sin is recorded? Joseph, Daniel, super spiritual, then Nebuchadnezzar, then Jacob. It'd be easy for me, we kind of talked about it a little bit last week, it'd be easy for me, I'm the pastor. Yeah, I'm just that spiritual. God's using me to convey an important message. He also used Balaam's donkey to convey a similar message. You're doing it wrong. Not that special. Divvied out by grace. He who teaches in teaching. He who exhorts in exhortation. These two go hand in hand. They go hand in hand for a reason. We're talking about teaching. We're talking about instruction. Exhortation kind of has this twofold application point. It's either to call someone alongside to build them up. So if I wanted to raise up a worship leader, I wouldn't call them alongside me because I'm not a worship leader. They'd get called alongside Cassie. If I wanted to raise up an assistant pastor, they would be raised up alongside me. They would be trained how to do that. Same thing with the ushers or the cookie ministry or whatever we have. But the other aspect to exhortation is the encouragement to go out and to do something with your instruction. That's important. Just like the back and forth we talked about before with unity and diversity, we have just the same kind of relationship between instruction and exhortation. I really like what the Bible says, what the Word says about the Word and our relationship to the Word. I'm a food guy. That's no surprise to anybody. Some of my favorite passages in the Word where it says, I've taken your Word, and what do they do with the Word? I ate it. Seems weird, but it's awesome. They're taking in all of the words. When we take in food, it goes into making us, making us stronger, making us healthier. But what happens if you're taking in all this word and you don't do anything with it? What happens if you take in nothing but food and you don't go outside and do something? I mean, what happens? Yeah. You start to look like me. The guy stalking the taco truck, which you would think caused more weight loss, but it doesn't. One of my issues, so when I was deployed on my second tour, Ben gave me free reign to order as many supplements I wanted to. My unit built this little prison gym next to our tent, and it was awesome. It was weird and dirty, but it was awesome. She told me to order whatever you wanted. You had free reign while you're over there. You order as many. So you give me that kind of reign, I'm absolutely going to do it. I spent a lot of money. I was in fantastic shape in my second tour. And I was in that process of, all right, make sure you get your sleep, eat right, take your supplements, work out. Any downtime you have, you need to blow off steam. Don't watch TV, go work out. You'll get in great shape. I took half of that mentality back with me when I came home. I still took my supplements. I still took my high-carb protein. Well, instead of working out, I decided to supplement that with beer. I was at 205 pounds at roughly 9% body fat. It did not take long to get to 270 pounds with a much higher concentrate of body fat. The same thing happens with the Word. If we're doing nothing but taking in the Word, and we do not go out and put it to use, you're going to be a plump little sheep with nothing but head knowledge. You can have one fierce debate, and I really love this about debates. When you listen to certain guys give these debates through the Word, or they just want to sit down and talk about the Word, one of the first things I ask is, where do you serve in your church? It's like, well, I don't really. You can't talk to me about your faith then. If you're going to keep it all in your head, not going to do anything with it, that's kind of counterproductive to what the Word calls us to do. Instruction is awesome. The gift of exhortation, equally awesome. Someone that comes alongside and encourages you to put that to work. And the gift of exhortation seems kind of rare. What does that even look like? I was given an example recently. I got to have a conversation with a young author. Had his little booth. People would come in and talk about the book and the things he's doing, but he also created a little worksheet on how to start writing your own story. That's awesome, isn't it? One, it's not easy to try and share the spotlight with anybody. That's what makes exhortation so hard. Why would I want to raise up another pastor in the church? Well, what if he looks better than me? What if he dresses better than me? What if he talks better than me? What if he can finish all of his words without stuttering all over the place? Well, I'm not going to raise up somebody who's going to do a better job than me. That's not the right mentality. So one, it's not only sharing the spotlight, or lack thereof, but also encouraging someone to put their gifts to use, having a worksheet to write their own story, showing them the right track to go. That is the spiritual gift of exhortation. How much more important it is to show those things in the body. Man, this is what's been on my heart. I just don't know. Man, let's pray about it. This is a great, easy step to really start putting that into practice. Now you've encouraged that piece of growing and continuing to live out the gospel and to walk by faith. He who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness, he who gives with liberality. There are members in the body that have been blessed with the ability to give, to support certain things in the church. I've seen this gift one time exercised in all the years I've been in the ministry. And it's an interesting gift. They identify certain needs within the body. For us, it's been either video equipment or worship equipment or certain events they target those certain events and they give prayerfully to whatever it is that that need is, and they address those needs. And he who leads with diligence. It's amazing kind of the shift. If you're called to exhort, then be in a place of exhortation. If you're called to teach, be in a place of teaching. If you're called to just serve, be in a place of serving. If you're called to prophesy, be in a place to prophesy. If you're called to lead, with diligence. Kind of a different concept. How important it is to pray for our leaders, and to pray especially for our church leaders. Why with diligence? First, it's wicked easy to get lazy. When things start growing, start coming along, we see the same warning against the bad shepherds in Ezekiel. It's easy to kind of cut loose some of your responsibilities and try and dictate those responsibilities to others. It's easy to get lazy. But also, it's easy to back off. When you are leading and you're met with resistance and you're met with failure, it's much easier sometimes to quit and not keep going. And he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. Mercy is a hard one. Why mercy with cheerfulness? What is mercy? To give somebody something that they don't deserve. They're not getting what they deserve. That's a hard one. Especially when we dole out mercy, and what do we get in response? Not mercy. That makes us not want to do it cheerfully. And you can't really hide it. What are some of the practical ways to show mercy? And I've got this to share. Number one, be patient with people's quirks. Help anyone around you who is hurting. Give people a second chance. Do good to those who hurt you. Be kind to those who offend you. Build bridges to love the unpopular. Value relationships over rules. The first step in the mercy process is to be just. The definition of mercy is compassionate treatment, having a capacity to forgive, or showing kindness. We're also told in the Word to not become weary in doing good. When we do good things, we expect good things to happen. This isn't karma. How important it is, especially in our relationships, to manage expectations. Well, I'm going to do this to always achieve X. So if you don't always achieve X, you're going to be less cheerful the next time you decide to show mercy. Let love be without hypocrisy. And that makes sense. Love with hypocrisy just isn't love. Be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Forfeit the other. Cling to the other. Completely cutting it out. We're not going to beat that one over the head much more, since we discussed it last week as far as the transformed mind. Verse 10, be kindly affectionate to one another, with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to one another. What is verse 10? Basically, the manners that you were taught as a kid, use those. Have good manners with one another. Not lagging in diligence, fervent in the spirit, serving the Lord. Called to work. Within the body, we are called to do something. We're called to do it with a being fervent in the spirit. Guza calls it being boiling in the spirit. On fire for God. I believe a lot of that aspect plays into being cheerful while showing mercy. We don't work for one another. We work with one another, working for God. So if you're working for God, the responses we're getting from one another, some people have their quirks, those things really just kind of fade away. But not lagging in diligence. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer. So first we're rejoicing in hope. I really like that one. Typically we forget to rejoice and rejoice together in the common hope that we all share. What is it that we choose to rejoice in? We choose to rejoice in results. What happens when you don't see the desired results? You stop rejoicing. But if you're rejoicing in the hope that has been given to us by faith, then your rejoicing isn't lost. So rejoice in hope and patient in tribulation. That's absolutely critical for the church. If we are not patient in tribulation, we adopt this mentality, well, it's been a bad day, it's been a bad week, so I'm going to take that with me wherever I go, and then we allow those trials that are designed to build us up, we allow those trials to kill off the love in the church. That is not patient in tribulation. Patient in tribulation, we also like to think that it's passive. I'm just going to wait till the storm is over. That doesn't even make any sense. That word being patient in tribulation gives the idea of more of an active endurance. This is pushing, so what am I going to do? I'm just going to lay there and take it. That doesn't even sound like fun. But rather, as believers, we are called to push back a little. We are called to do something with what we have been given. And continuing always steadfastly in prayer. This section is still dealing with the relationships between the believers. The concept of continuing steadfastly in prayer is not just for us at the individual level, but also as a body. Why should we continue steadfastly in prayer? Because when you're praying together, you're growing together. You cannot pray together without taking down your walls. You cannot pray together without being able to look over somebody else's wall. That makes us really, really nervous. Why? Because when we pray, we reveal our hurts. We reveal our heart. Sometimes we reveal, often, our theology and our concept of, I don't want them to judge me. I don't want them to know that I'm weak. I don't want them to know that I'm hurting. So instead, I'm going to love with hypocrisy. I'm going to pray this way. And it doesn't get you anywhere. But I will tell you this. Our prayer circle started out with 4 people-ish. And we've had some people kind of on the out. And the prayer group at 9:30 on Sunday mornings is open to everybody. You can come and pray. We pray together. If you don't want to pray, you just want to sit there part of the prayer group, you can do that too. But we've had people sitting on the outskirts of the prayer group. They come late halfway through prayer. Then they start coming to prayer, but they sit a little bit further away. Then they'll keep coming, and they start scooting a little bit closer to the prayer group. Then they're sitting in the midst of the prayer group. And then they start praying within the prayer group. And great big whopping surprise, they're serving like all over the church. What a concept. If you pray together, you will grow together. It is physics, it's just undeniable. So continue steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. Hospitality is kind of one of those long-lost art forms. We often think hospitality is somebody, and I very much appreciate it, but I'm going to invite the pastor over to my house for dinner, or he's invited me, or we're within the church, we're inviting each other over to have a meal together. That's awesome, and we should be doing that. Again, you're letting somebody in your home, you're letting down your walls. There's not a lot you can hide. Anybody that's got kids, you're not hiding anything. They don't have an off button. They don't have a filter. They don't have a line. They're going to say whatever. Oh, guess what my dad does? Oh, son. He lets me do this. No, I don't. We've been through that. We've been those kids. But the word for hospitality means to love. It's a love for strangers. That process of outreach. Be given to hospitality. I do not like that word given. What's it say in the ESV? That's better. That word literally means pursuing. You think it just happens. We just happen upon being hospitable. That's not what the word teaches. Literally what that word means is to pursue. Pursue hospitality. pursue strangers. And now we start to move from our relationship with fellow believers to non-believers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. We'll come back to that one. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Consider one another. Consider one another's feelings. We have a hard time with this process. When someone's rejoicing, we'd rather weep or throw stones. When somebody is weeping, we'd far rather rejoice, because weeping is kind of a drag. Typically, when somebody's rejoicing, what are they rejoicing for? Something amazing has just happened. Why do we choose not to rejoice with them? Because it didn't happen to you. He just got a new car. I need a new car. He just got a promotion. He doesn't deserve that job. He takes naps all throughout the day. I should have gotten promoted. So he comes to a place where, yeah, congratulations on the promotion. Try not to blow it. We have a really hard time meeting people on those levels and not being considerate. We're having a really hard time being considerate of one another because we're spending more time trying to be considerate of ourselves. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Especially when we're believers, especially when we are heirs, especially when we are filled with the Spirit, especially when we're given our spiritual gift, we're knowing how many places to serve, or we just have our minds set more towards lofty, proper, cleaner, fancier things. If you have your mind set on those things, you're not in a place to weep with those weeping, or to rejoice with those rejoicing, or to reach out, or to bless those, and not to curse those. When someone does wrong, big or small, we have a lofty idea of something, and then we attack the situation through the flesh and not the Spirit. And he says, do not be wise in your own opinion. Paul's going back through the last 11 chapters and a half. It was given to you by grace, not because of your own merits. You call me Lord, rightfully so. So if I've given you the tools, I've blessed you with the means to use them, and I've given you purpose, go out and do it. Repay no one for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. Part of living the gospel is recognizing the concept that you are consistently adding to your testimony and to your witness daily. Talk truly is cheap. If I'm giving you this message of right living, and you decide to stop off at my house for whatever reason, and I don't know, play Legos, and you see me swearing at my dog and beating my wife after I just gave you a message of right living, which one's going to have more weight in your life from my life? By what I've said or by what I've done? So non-believers looking at our lives, can they tell what is right and what is wrong by paying attention to how we function as a group together and at the individual level? Can they choose? Can they see those things? If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. The situation that verse is pretty self-explanatory. I would, however, highlight one word: if, which means it's not always possible. But we should keep ourselves in a place, as much as it depends on us, to live peaceably, not to be contentious. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in doing so, you will heap coals of fire on his head. This verse has been so misinterpreted. If you do good to your enemy, it's for everyone, don't do good to my enemy, so I can coat him in fire. Death by fire. That's how I hear that taught. That doesn't even make any sense. I'm going to do really good to my enemy so I can watch him burn and suffer. That is not the heart of the believer. We see that represented just in Jonah. That's not the heart, that's not the message. Jonah showed up, and if you really study through the book of Jonah, and you listen to his, we're just going to call it a gospel message, his warning. We'll go with his warning. What was the message he was supposed to give? Turn back to the Lord in 40 days, basically trounce. That's the Wage paraphrase version. What message did Jonah give? In 40 days, you're going to be destroyed. So probably a pale white. He spent 3 days in the belly of the fish. There's been other stories that people have survived that. Actually, here recently, somebody was pulled out of a whale. But if you spend 3 days in there, you're going to be a little bit, you're going to be a little chalky. So a weird Jewish guy who essentially is your enemy, shows up in your city, which at the time was the capital, and he gives the message, in 40 days you're going to be destroyed. And that's all he said, and then he left town. Are we going to be destroyed by who? The Israelites are rising up? The Babylonians got stronger? Well, what's Egypt's forces looking like these days? So he gave them the very bare bones of the message, and they turned back to God. They put on sackcloth, they covered their head in ash, and they repented. And Jonah was not happy at all that God spared Nineveh. If you remember, Jonah didn't even want to go because he knew that God was capable of great mercy. My friends, that is not the meaning of this verse. We're not trying to be kind to our enemies so that we can watch them go up in flames. That's the stupidest piece of logic I've ever heard. That concept of heaping coals on his head, I prefer two other translations. One, you're giving him the coals for his fire. You are helping him out. Or two, probably the more accurate one, is a burning conviction. We've seen that one, haven't we? Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. The temple guard comes to arrest Christ. Peter goes into Obi-Wan Kenobi mode, and he lops off the ear of one of the servants. That servant's name was Malchus. We don't have anything else afterwards on Malchus. How did that change things? How Jesus went to the cross. We know how zealots would typically go to the cross, kicking and screaming and fighting and still trying to stab somebody. But we see a Roman centurion confess at the cross that truly this was the Son of God. We've seen, by the way, we interact with our enemies. The purpose is God's purpose. He desires that none should perish. How we treat our enemies, regardless of how they treat us, not repaying evil for evil, it puts that thing of conviction on their heads. That's how people are supposed to tell Christians apart. How we relate to one another. Anybody in the world can retaliate. Anybody else in the world can be petty. Anybody else can be divisive. Given the opportunity, it's easy to try and seize the opportunity to get ahead. One of my favorites is Joseph. Joseph was stuck in prison with two other guys. We'll get there in the book of Genesis. He was stuck in jail with two other guys. One guy left and he ended up having his head removed. The other guy went back to his full service to Pharaoh. What does Joseph tell that guy? Dude, when you get up there, remember me so I can get out of jail. Joseph finally gets released. He goes and he stands before Pharaoh. Pharaoh's having a problem. He had a couple of scary dreams with the grain and the fat cows and the skinny cows and it's, basically the famine that's coming. And Pharaoh says, what? I am told that you can interpret dreams. What can you do? You're absolutely right, I can. No one interprets a dream like I do. He says, I can't interpret dreams. But there is a God that will give me the interpretation for your dream. We see something similar with Nebuchadnezzar. And we've gone through the book of Daniel, and you've heard my opinion, but I fully expect that we'll see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. How we interact with our enemies is a big deal. I'm not telling you to not have conflict resolved. I'm not telling you to not stand up for yourself or to stand up for what is right. What I would tell you is make sure you're sticking to yielding your life, living a separated life, choosing to have your mind transformed, to remember the mercies of God when you are in that place, so that you don't react in the flesh, but rather in the spirit. We see something similar in the book of Genesis with Abram, didn't we, just a few weeks ago? Lot was captured. We do, and we will later in chapter 19, see Abram intercede and pray for Lot. That's not what he did. against the 4 kings of the region of Babylon. What did he do? He snuck up on them with 318 guys, and he gave them a trouncing. How do I know the will of God in my life? Is your life yielded to God for him to do with it as he sees fit? Do you live a life separated from the world and given to God where you can heal him, hear him? You choose to transform your mind, focus less on the things of the world and more on the things of God. Are you choosing to remember his mercies before you go into that situation? That is how you know what God is planning or wanting for you to do in that situation. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. It's very easy to get sucked in. It's very easy to become envious of what everybody else has. Some Christians, like we've discussed with him who gives with liberality, he's been blessed to be in a place to give as he sees fit because he's just, for lack of better words, he's got money just pouring out of his ears. Those aren't the examples we look at, is it? How many poor UFC fighters do you see typically? Somebody that's used to swindling or cheating or runs a dodgy business, or is just a terrible person. They've got the boats and the cars and the houses and the toys. It's easy to get sucked in. It's easy, from verse 21, to use different tactics to try and handle our relationships. And then we start to stray from there. If you want to know, you want to hear from God, you want to know how to live out the gospel, you want to know what the will of God is in his life, I would exhort you to go back to the place of meditation on the first 2 verses of this chapter. Am I yielded to God? And am I choosing to be separated to him for his purposes? Let's pray together. Lord, thank you so much for the day that you've blessed us with. Lord, sometimes we don't really put so much emphasis on relationships. We certainly don't put much emphasis into people. Because either we've been that person to let somebody down, or we have a great deal of people in our lives that have let us down. I pray, God, that our heart would be made like yours, that our eyes would be made like yours, so that we could see and feel towards people, Lord, the way that you do. In truth, in mercy, in grace, and how important they are. Because we are that important to you. And Lord, we see another hard aspect in the Word this morning as we are called to work, as we are called to that place of service. We would feel unfit for it. We would feel unworthy for it. Or we would feel unprepared for it. We know, God, that everything you have called us to, you have equipped us for. And I pray, God, that we would remember that it is by grace. You have blessed us, Lord, not because we have earned it or deserved it, but simply because you love us. And that is your heart towards us. And we love you and we praise you and we pray in your name. Amen.